If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Continuing. The rain fell relentlessly that morning in London, turning Oxford Street into a river of colourful umbrellas. The Regent Cafe, situated near the tube station, was more crowded than usual. People sought shelter and an extra dose of caffeine to face the grey day. The noise of the coffee machines, the lively conversations, and the sound of the rain created a chaotic urban symphony. Amid this scene, the cafe doors opened and a woman entered. Her red coat vibrated, like a flame in contrast to the grey atmosphere. It was impossible not to notice her: perfectly styled blonde hair, an elegant posture, and a presence that, though discreet, commanded attention. Behind the counter, Thomas cast a bored glance at the newcomer. Just another customer to serve in the middle of this endless shift. The woman approached the counter with calculated steps, and when it was her turn, instead of speaking, she began to gesture with her hands. "Hello? What's this? Charades?" Thomas asked mockingly. "If you can't speak, maybe you shouldn't be ordering." Laughter spread among a few nearby customers. The woman maintained her dignity, trying again to communicate through signs. The discomfort was palpable in the air. In a corner of the cafe, near the small kitchen area, a 7-year-old girl watched the scene with attentive eyes. Sophia wore a blue dress with cloud patterns, and her dark curls framed an intelligent and expressive face. The daughter of Robert, the cafe's manager, she often spent her mornings there after school. Sophia had been born deaf and communicated fluently in BSL, British Sign Language. Her father, Robert, had learned it for her, and now the two shared this silent language. Seeing the elegant woman's embarrassment, Sophia got up from the little chair where she was colouring a drawing. Ignoring her father's concerned look, she crossed the room with determined steps and stood beside the stranger. Naturally, her little hands began to dance in the air, translating for the barista. "She wants a latte with oat milk, no sugar." Silence fell over the place. Thomas, embarrassed, looked at the little girl and then at the woman. "Oh, is that it? A latte with oat milk, no sugar," he repeated awkwardly. "Coming right up." The woman in the red coat looked at Sophia with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Her skilled hands formed a silent "thank you" that the girl understood perfectly. The stranger's eyes shone with emotion at the simple yet significant gesture. Robert watched the scene with a contradictory mix of feelings: pride in his daughter's noble action and something indefinable, a nameless unease he couldn't explain. While the coffee was being prepared, the woman crouched down to Sophia's level and started a conversation in BSL. Their fingers danced in the air like birds, and the girl responded with the same fluency. Silent laughs were exchanged, and Robert noticed how rarely his daughter felt so at ease with strangers. When the latte was ready, the woman paid, adding a generous tip. Before leaving, she took a business card from her leather briefcase and handed it to little Sophia. "For you, little interpreter," she signed. "You have a special gift." Sophia accepted the card with eyes shining with admiration. The woman waved goodbye and left, her red coat quickly swallowed by the London rain. Robert approached his daughter and gently took the card to look at it. His heart stopped for a moment as he read the name printed in. Elegant letters. Eleanor Mendelsohn, CEO, Novatech Urban Mobility. The blood drained from his face. Novatech. That name had haunted his nightmares for 3 years. The company responsible for the accident that had taken Deborah, his wife, from him. The company that had buried the evidence, escaped justice, and destroyed his life. "Dad, are you okay?" Sophia signed, worried by her father's sudden pallor. Robert forced a shaky smile. "I'm fine, Princess. I just remembered something important." That afternoon, when the cafe was quieter, Robert sat at a secluded table, staring at Eleanor Mendelsohn's card. Memories flooded his mind like a torrent. 3 years earlier, his life was completely different. A respected software engineer, he worked for a smaller company that provided services to Novatech. Deborah, his wife, was a safety engineer at Novatech itself, responsible for testing flaws in the systems of the autonomous cars the company was developing. Deborah was brilliant. She had identified serious flaws in the vehicle's automatic braking system. Flaws that, according to her, could be fatal. She had documented everything, sent reports, insisted on meetings, but no one wanted to delay the billion-dollar launch. Her warnings were ignored, her reports lost in the systems. And then, one morning during a test, one of the autonomous cars failed exactly as she had predicted. Deborah was in the vehicle. The accident was devastating. Novatech moved heaven and earth to cover up the negligence. Human error, they said, an isolated case. Financial compensation for the family with a non-disclosure agreement. Robert refused to sign. He wanted justice, not money. His lonely fight against the corporate giant cost him his job. No tech company in London wanted to hire someone suing Novatech. His savings ran out. The house was sold. All that remained was a small flat in Brixton, far from the comfortable life they had, and the job as a cafe manager that a friend offered him out of pity. The only light in his existence was Sophia. After what happened to her mother, the girl stopped speaking. Doctors discovered that the emotional trauma had accelerated a latent genetic condition, leading to total hearing loss. Sophia's world became silent, just like Robert's heart. Now, 3 years later, fate had placed the CEO of Novatech in his path, through the innocence of his own daughter. It was like a cruel joke from the universe. "Everything all right, Robert?" The voice of Martha, one of the baristas, brought him back to reality. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," he lied, putting the card in his pocket. "Just tired." In the following days, Robert couldn't get Eleanor Mendelssohn out of his mind. Part of him wanted to confront her, demand explanations, unleash all his accumulated anger. Another part just wanted to stay away, to protect Sophia from any connection to that company. But fate had other plans. On Wednesday morning, less than a week after their first encounter, the cafe door opened again, the red coat reappeared, and Eleanor Mendelssohn entered the Regent Cafe alone, without her corporate aura. Her eyes scanned the room until they found Sophia, who was sitting and drawing. A smile lit up her face, and she waved at the girl. Sophia waved back enthusiastically. Her little fingers began to move in the air, telling the woman about her drawing. Eleanor approached, responding in BSL with the same fluency. Robert watched everything from the counter, his chest tight. The woman who represented everything that had destroyed his life was there, talking to his daughter, as if they were old friends. The contrast between his inner hatred and Sophia's genuine joy tore him apart. Eleanor noticed his presence, and after a moment's hesitation, walked towards him. Her eyes, Robert noted, held a mixture of determination and something that looked like guilt. "Good morning," she said aloud, though her hands also formed the corresponding signs, a habit Robert recognized in those who live between the deaf and hearing worlds. "Can we talk?" Robert felt his body stiffen. The CEO of Novatech wanted to talk to him. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind in seconds. Did she know who he was? Had she discovered his connection? To Deborah? Or was it just a coincidence, a genuine interest in his daughter? "About what?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral, though his hands trembled slightly. "Your daughter is extraordinary," Eleanor replied, looking at Sophia, who continued to draw. "Her fluency in BSL, the naturalness with which she communicates, it's not common in children her age." Robert nodded, his fatherly pride momentarily overcoming his suspicion. "Sophia was born hearing, but she lost her hearing 3 years ago," he explained briefly, avoiding mention of the trauma that triggered the condition. "We adapted together." Eleanor studied him for a moment, as if assessing something beyond his words. "I learned BSL out of necessity too," she revealed, discreetly running her fingers behind her ear, where Robert noticed the presence of a small hearing aid. "I lost part of my hearing in childhood. I wear aids, but there are situations where they're not enough." The cafe manager felt an internal conflict. It was hard to maintain his hatred when the person he wanted to blame revealed herself to be so human. Eleanor took a beige envelope from her briefcase, sealed with Novatech's minimalist logo, a stylized N that Robert knew all too well. "I have a proposal for you," she continued, placing the envelope on the counter. "We're developing an assistive technology project. a real-time translator from BSL to audio and text using artificial intelligence. We need consultants who truly understand the needs of the deaf community. Robert looked at the envelope as if it were a snake about to strike. Why me? Because you live in both worlds. You have a deaf daughter, you're fluent in BSL, but you also understand the barriers that exist for hearing people. And from what Sophia told me, you have a background in technology. So, she really didn't know who he was, or she was a very good actress. Robert felt a pang of relief mixed with suspicion. The salary is competitive, Eleanor continued, and you could bring Sophia in occasionally. We have a recreation room at the company for employees' children. The idea of setting foot in Novatech, the company that had destroyed his life, made Robert's stomach churn. But on the other hand, the bills were late, the rent had increased, and the cafe salary barely covered their basic needs and Sophia's therapies. I'll think about it, he finally replied, taking the envelope. Eleanor smiled, nodding. Of course, my contact details are inside, and Robert, she hesitated briefly. We all need second chances, don't we? There was something in her gaze, a momentary vulnerability that intrigued him. Before he could respond, Sophia approached, showing her drawing to Eleanor. It was a portrait of the CEO herself, surprisingly detailed for a 7-year-old. It's for you, Sophia signed, smiling. Eleanor knelt, visibly moved. It's beautiful, Sophia. I'll keep it forever. Her hands formed the signs with delicacy. After the CEO left, Robert opened the envelope. The salary offered was 3 times his current income. Benefits. Included a top-tier health plan, something that would be a blessing for Sophia's medical needs. At the end of the document, a handwritten note. We need someone who knows silence, and even more, someone who knows how to listen to it. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, Robert sat on the small balcony of their flat. The constant noise of Brixton, horns, conversations, distant music, contrasted with the silent turmoil of his thoughts. In his hands were the Novatech envelope and an old photo of Deborah. What would she say? What would Deborah advise at this moment? His wife had always been the family's moral compass, the one who saw beyond appearances. That's why she noticed the flaws in the autonomous cars that no one else did or wanted to. If she were alive, what would she think about him working for the company responsible for the tragedy? The answer came not from his memories, but from Sophia. The girl appeared on the balcony, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Can't sleep, Princess, Robert signed. Sophia shook her head and pointed to the envelope in her father's hand. Is it from the lady in the red coat? Robert nodded. Does she want you to work with her? Again he nodded, surprised by his daughter's perceptiveness. Sophia thought for a moment. Her little hands paused in the air, as she always did when reflecting deeply. Then, with the clarity that only children possess, she signed, Maybe now you can fix what hurt us. His daughter's simple words hit Robert like a revelation. Sophia didn't know the details, but somehow, intuitively, she had captured the essence of her father's dilemma, and she offered with innocence a possibility he hadn't considered, turning his resentment into something constructive. The next morning, Robert called the number on the card. The Novatech headquarters occupied an impressive glass and steel building in Canary Wharf, London's financial and technological heart. Robert, wearing his best suit, stored for years at the back of the wardrobe, felt like an intruder as he passed through the electronic turnstiles. The lobby was a monument to innovation. Concept cars on display, entire walls of interactive screens, service robots circulating among employees. An environment that contrasted starkly with the cafe where he worked and the cramped flat where he lived. Mr. Edwards, Eleanor is waiting for you on the 18th floor. A receptionist smiled, handing him a visitor's badge. As the lift ascended, Robert fought the urge to flee. He was walking into the lion's den, voluntarily placing himself in the hands of the company that had ruined his life, and yet Sophia's words echoed in his mind. Fix what hurt us. The 18th floor was different from what he had imagined. He expected more ostentation, but found a collaborative space with many plants, natural light, and a relaxed atmosphere. Several employees wore hearing aids or communicated in BSL. "Welcome to Novatech's Accessibility and Inclusion Division," said a young woman who introduced herself as Camille, Eleanor's assistant. "It's our newest project. Eleanor is just finishing a meeting, but she asked me to show you the lab in the meantime." The lab was a large space where engineers and designers worked on various prototypes. Camille enthusiastically explained each project: gloves that translated BSL to text in real time, glasses with automatic captions for people with hearing impairments, navigation systems for the visually impaired. "Most of our team has some form of disability or is a family member of someone who does," explained Camille, who Robert noticed wore a hearing aid similar to Eleanor's. "We believe that those who live the problem have a better chance of creating truly useful solutions." Robert couldn't help but be impressed. Was this genuine or just a corporate social responsibility facade? Before he could reflect further, Eleanor appeared, smiling when she saw him. "Robert, I'm so glad you came." Her hands accompanied her spoken words in BSL, something he realized was common among everyone there. "Shall we go to my office?" Eleanor's office was spacious but surprisingly cozy. Large windows offered a panoramic view of London, and the walls displayed photos of company projects and, Robert noticed with surprise, the drawings Sophia had made, already framed. "Your CV is impressive," Eleanor commented, consulting a file on her tablet. "Software engineer with a specialization in user interfaces. Exactly what we need." Robert frowned. "How did you get my CV? I didn't send anything." Eleanor seemed slightly embarrassed. "I confess I did a little research. Your name sounded familiar when Sophia mentioned it. You've worked on projects related to Novatech before, haven't you?" Robert's heart raced. Did she know? "I've done contract work for a few companies in the sector," he replied vaguely. "Well, that explains your experience." Eleanor seemed to accept the answer. "Our proposal is simple. We want you to lead the development of the BSL translator's interface, something intuitive for both deaf and hearing users." As she detailed the project, Robert watched her closely. There was a genuine passion in her words, an enthusiasm that didn't seem manufactured. Either she was an exceptional actress, or she truly believed in what she was doing. "Why is this project so important to you?" Robert interrupted. Eleanor paused, surprised by the direct question. For a moment, the confident CEO gave way to someone more vulnerable. "I grew up as the girl with the hearing aid," she revealed, discreetly touching the device. "My father was an old-school hardline executive. He taught me to hide my weakness, to overcompensate tenfold, never talk about it, never ask for help." She paused, looking out the window. "When I took over as CEO of Novatech 2 years ago, I promised myself I would change that culture, to create technologies that really help people like me, like your daughter." 2 years? Robert repeated, calculating mentally. That meant she had taken over after the accident that killed Deborah. "So you weren't in charge when—" He stopped abruptly, realizing he had almost given himself away. "When?" Eleanor encouraged him to continue, curious. "When Novatech launched the first autonomous vehicles," Robert improvised. "It was a milestone in the industry." "Ah, yes," she nodded, not noticing his hesitation. "My father, Augustus Mendelssohn, was in charge back then. He built the Novatech empire practically on his own. When he fell ill, I had to take over sooner than I expected." Robert absorbed the information with interest. Augustus Mendelssohn, the name of the man who had quashed Deborah's case, who had ordered the cover-up of the flaws, who had bought judges and manipulated the media. "And where is your father now?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "In a care home in the Cotswolds. A stroke followed by complications." Eleanor sighed. "Physically he's stable, but his mind—" She didn't complete the sentence, but her gesture said it all. "He's still chairman of the board, though only nominally." A heavy silence hung between them. Robert felt a contradictory mix of emotions. Revenge against the one truly responsible seemed impossible now. The man who had destroyed his life was already paying in another way. "Anyway," Eleanor resumed, returning to her professional demeanor, "we're completely reorienting the company. Less focus on autonomous vehicles, more on assistive technologies and sustainable mobility solutions. It was the mention of autonomous vehicles that made Robert decide. If there was a chance, however small, of preventing other families from going through what he had to try. "I accept the job," he said firmly. "When do I start?" Eleanor's smile lit up her face. "How about Monday? That gives you time to sort things out at the cafe." The following Monday, Robert began his journey at Novatech. He was assigned to a diverse team: programmers, designers, linguists specializing in BSL, and some deaf users who tested the prototypes. Camille, Eleanor's assistant, was the project coordinator. "Our biggest challenge is the accuracy in translating facial expressions," explained Luke, a deaf developer in fluent BSL. "The AI still confuses irony with anger, for example." Robert threw himself into the work with intensity. On one hand, it was stimulating to be back in technology, using his software engineering skills that had lain dormant for years. On the other, he couldn't help but feel he was betraying Deborah's memory every time he contributed to the success of a Novatech project. At night, at home, Sophia would ask excitedly about his day. Her little eyes would shine as he described the prototypes or showed her videos of the tests. His daughter's excitement was like a balm for his restless conscience. "When can I visit?" Sophia would sign eagerly. "Soon, Princess," Robert would promise. "Let me get settled first." In truth, he was afraid to take Sophia to the company, as if the building could somehow contaminate her with the same tragedy that had taken her mother. The days turned into weeks. Robert was surprised to find he actually enjoyed working there. The team was talented and dedicated, the project was meaningful, and the environment was genuinely inclusive. Eleanor appeared regularly in the lab, monitoring progress, offering insights, and occasionally testing the prototypes herself. During one of these visits, she invited Robert to lunch. "So, what do you think of the project so far?" she asked as they enjoyed Japanese food at a restaurant near the company. "It's stimulating," Robert admitted sincerely, "especially seeing the tests with real users. The difference this could make." "Exactly," Eleanor's face lit up. "That's what technology should be about. Making a real difference in people's lives, not just creating expensive gadgets for those who already have everything." There was a genuine passion in her voice that Robert couldn't deny. During lunch, they talked about the project's future, about Sophia, about the challenges of communication in a predominantly hearing world. "You know," Eleanor commented, playing with her chopsticks, "I'd really like to get to know your daughter better. She impressed me from the very first moment." Robert felt the alarm bells ring in his mind. Keeping Sophia away from Novatech was one thing, but keeping her completely away from Eleanor was becoming increasingly difficult, especially with the girl constantly asking about the lady in the red coat. "Maybe one of these days," he replied vaguely. Eleanor seemed to notice his reluctance. "Sorry if I'm being intrusive, it's just that I don't know many children who went through what I did. When I see Sophia, so confident in her silence, it makes me wonder how my life could have been different if I'd had that support." It was the vulnerability in that confession that finally broke down Robert's resistance. The following weekend, he took Sophia for a picnic in Hyde Park. Eleanor met them near the lake, bringing a gift for the girl, a tablet specially configured with educational apps for deaf children. Sophia was delighted not just with the gift, but especially with Eleanor. The two chatted animatedly in BSL, sometimes so quickly that even Robert had trouble keeping up. Seeing them side by side, it was impossible not to notice certain similarities, not physical, but in the way they expressed themselves, in their humor, in the lively intelligence in both their eyes. "She's incredible, Robert," Eleanor commented as they watched Sophia play with some ducks by the lake's edge. "So bright, so resilient." "She takes after her mother," he replied, a lump in his throat. "And your wife, does she use BSL too?" The innocent question hit Robert like a punch. It was the first time Eleanor had directly mentioned his family situation. "Deborah is no longer with us," he answered with difficulty. "It's been 3 years." Eleanor's face contorted in genuine empathy. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "It was an accident," Robert continued, watching her reaction closely. "A car accident. Eleanor paled slightly but showed no sign of specific recognition. That's terrible. Sophia must have been very young. That's when she lost her hearing, Robert explained, without going into detail. The trauma triggered a condition that was already latent. Eleanor looked at the girl playing in the distance, a new understanding in her eyes. She's even more extraordinary than I thought, she murmured. To go through all that and still be so luminous. Something in the way Eleanor looked at Sophia, with a mix of admiration and sadness, made Robert question his certainties. Was it possible that she really didn't know about Deborah? That the CEO of Novatech was ignorant of the skeletons in her own company's closet? The following weeks at Novatech were intensely productive. The project advanced rapidly, with Robert taking on an increasingly central role. His previous experience with user interfaces proved invaluable, and soon he was coordinating his own team. Sophia occasionally accompanied him to the company, becoming a sort of team mascot. Everyone adored her, especially the deaf employees, who were impressed by her fluency in BSL for such a young child. The closeness between Robert and Eleanor also grew. They worked together frequently, sometimes late into the night, discussing project improvements, or simply talking about the challenges of raising a deaf child in a world that rarely adapts to differences. You know what's ironic? Eleanor commented during one of these late nights as they reviewed code together. I spent my life trying to hide my hearing impairment. I used my hair to cover the aids, pretended to understand when I couldn't hear, avoided noisy meetings, all to seem normal. And now, Robert asked. Now I realize how much time and energy I wasted trying to be something I'm not. She smiled. Seeing Sophia so comfortable in her own skin makes me want to be more like her. It was in that moment that Robert began to see Eleanor not as the CEO of Novatech, not as part of the company that had destroyed his life, but as a person, complex, imperfect, struggling with her own demons. The progress of the BSL translator surpassed all expectations. After 3 months of development, they had a functional prototype that converted signs into text and audio with surprising accuracy. The presentation to the company's board was scheduled for the end of the week. You should give the presentation, Eleanor suggested to Robert. No one knows the project better than you. Are you sure? It's a crucial moment for the company. That's precisely why. I want them to see your work, Robert. You've transformed this project into something much bigger than we imagined. The presentation would be before the entire board, including some executives from the old management who had remained after the leadership transition. Robert was nervous, but prepared. On the eve of the presentation, while finalizing the slides in his cubicle, a towering figure appeared at his door, a tall man with graying hair and an impeccable suit. So you're the famous Robert Edwards everyone's talking about, the man said with a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. I'm Gregory Myers, Chief Operating Officer. Robert knew the name. Gregory was Augustus Mendelssohn's right-hand man, mentioned in the lawsuits. He had filed against the company, one of those who had actively worked to cover up Deborah's case. A pleasure, he replied dryly, extending his hand. Gregory ignored the gesture, looking around the cubicle. Interesting how our CEO has taken a special interest in you. A cafe manager with no recent experience in tech, hired personally by her. He let the insinuation hang in the air. Cafe manager, Robert corrected, keeping his cool. And I have a master's in software engineering from Imperial College. Of course. Gregory's fake smile widened. In any case, I'm looking forward to your presentation tomorrow. The board will be attentive. When the executive left, Robert felt a chill. There was something predatory in the way Gregory had observed him, as if he knew something Robert didn't. That night, upon arriving home, he found Sophia already asleep. The babysitter, Mrs. Zelda, informed him that Eleanor had called. She said it's urgent, that you should call back no matter the time. Robert frowned, worried. What could be so urgent? With an uneasy feeling, he dialed Eleanor's number. Eleanor answered on the first ring. Her voice sounded tense, almost trembling. Robert, where are you? At home. Sophia's already asleep. What happened? We need to talk in person. Can I come to your flat? Robert hesitated. He had never had Eleanor over. It was as if he maintained an invisible line separating the two worlds, Novatek and his home with Sophia. Is it really that urgent? Extremely. Something in her voice convinced him. I'll text you the address. Half an hour later, a soft knock sounded on the door. Robert opened it to find an unrecognizable Eleanor. No makeup, hair carelessly tied back, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, so different from the impeccable executive he saw daily. Sorry to show up like this, she said, entering quickly. Her eyes scanned the small flat, the modest living room that also served as Robert's makeshift office, some of Sophia's toys scattered about, photos of the girl everywhere. Robert offered coffee, which she accepted with a nod. As he prepared the drink in the open-plan kitchen, Eleanor stopped in front of a photograph on a shelf. Robert and Sophia with Deborah, the three of them smiling on a beach, happy, complete. Your wife was beautiful, Eleanor commented softly. Sophia has her smile. Robert felt the old pain resurface. Yes, she does. He placed 2 cups on the coffee table and sat on the sofa, indicating the armchair for Eleanor. What happened? Is it about tomorrow's presentation? Eleanor sighed deeply. It's about you, Robert. About who you really are. The blood ran cold in his veins. What are you talking about? Gregory Myers came to my office this afternoon. He found out your real connection to Novatek. Eleanor looked him straight in the eye. You're the widower of Deborah Edwards, the engineer who... She swallowed hard. Who was in the autonomous car prototype accident. Robert felt as if the floor had disappeared. From under his feet, the moment he had dreaded had arrived. His charade was over. You knew all along? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. No, Eleanor shook her head vehemently. I swear I didn't. When Gregory showed me the files, I was shocked. I remembered your name sounded familiar at first, but I never made the connection. I never personally followed that... case. Case? Robert felt rage rising like lava. My wife was a victim of corporate negligence. She warned your company about fatal flaws and she was ignored. Then Novatek buried the evidence, sued me for defamation, when I tried to expose the truth and destroyed my career. The words exploded from him, all the pent-up anger finally finding an outlet. Eleanor didn't back down, weathering the storm with tear-filled eyes. I know that now, she replied calmly. I read everything today. Deborah's original reports, the internal memos ordering them to be ignored, the meeting minutes where they decided to cover it up. Her voice broke. It's disgusting what they did. Robert studied her, searching for any sign of falsehood, of corporate manipulation. He found none. Why are you telling me this? Are you going to fire me now that you know who I am? Fire you? Eleanor seemed genuinely surprised. No, Robert, I came to warn you. Gregory is preparing his counterattack. He's going to use your infiltration of the company as proof of industrial espionage, or something worse. He plans to expose you at the board meeting tomorrow. He can try, Robert challenged. I have nothing to hide. You don't understand, Eleanor insisted, leaning forward. Gregory is dangerous. He's the one who coordinated the entire cover-up of Deborah's accident. He gave the order to destroy the reports, pressure witnesses, manipulate evidence, and now he's afraid. You're here for revenge. The mention of the name of the person truly responsible awakened a new wave of fury in Robert. And your father, Augustus Mendelssohn? What was his role in all this? Eleanor briefly averted her gaze. My father. He approved everything Gregory did. He trusted him blindly. It was always like that. Results above all else. Problems swept under the rug. She took a deep breath. But that doesn't justify it. Nothing does. The silence weighed between them. Robert tried to process everything. Part of him wanted to throw Eleanor out of his house to sever any connection, with Novatek once and for all. Another part was strangely relieved to finally have the truth on the table. Why do you care? He finally asked. Why are you risking your position to warn me? Eleanor looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because I'm tired of secrets, tired of a company built on lies and suffering. Her voice was low but intense. When I took over as CEO, I promised myself I would change Novatech's culture. But how can I do that without facing the mistakes of the past? She paused, taking a sip of coffee. And there's something else, she continued. I heard rumors about that accident a few years ago, back when I was still in the development department. I questioned my father, who assured me everything had been properly investigated. I believed him. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I should have pushed, investigated on my own. Maybe I could have done something. Robert absorbed her words, surprised by the raw honesty. For 3 years he had imagined everyone at Novatech as calculating villains. The reality, as always, was more complex. What do you suggest we do? He asked, noticing he had used we. Somehow, he no longer saw Eleanor as an adversary. We have to find concrete proof, something that not even Gregory can deny or manipulate. Eleanor seemed determined. The company's old servers still exist, archived in the basement. If Deborah's reports were just deleted but not completely wiped. I can recover them, Robert completed, his software engineer brain already calculating possibilities. But we'd need access. I have access, Eleanor confirmed. As CEO, I can get into any part of the network. They spent the next few hours devising a plan. After the next day's presentation, when most of the employees had gone, Robert would use Eleanor's credentials to access the old servers and search for any trace of Deborah's reports. Meanwhile, Eleanor would keep Gregory distracted in a budget meeting. It was past midnight when they finalized the details. Robert walked Eleanor to the door, a strange intimacy having formed between them, not romantic but an alliance born of shared truth. Thank you for listening to me, she said, stopping in the hallway. I would have understood if you'd thrown me out. I still don't know if I can completely trust you, Robert admitted honestly. But I want to believe. Eleanor nodded. That's fair. Tomorrow we'll take the first step towards fixing some of the harm that was done. As she turned to leave, Robert called out to her, Eleanor, why do you care so much about this BSL translator project? Is it really just because of your hearing impairment? She smiled sadly. When I was a child, before modern hearing aids, I lived in a partially silent world. It was terrifying, not being able to understand what was happening around me, seeing people laugh and not knowing if it was at me. Her eyes were lost in distant memories. My father taught me to hide that weakness, to compensate by being flawless in everything else. I could never just be a normal kid. And what does that have to do with the project? Technology should connect people, not isolate them. It should break down barriers, not build them. Her gaze met Robert's, intense and sincere. When I saw Sophia in that cafe, so small and already facing a world not made for her, I promised myself I would do something that truly mattered. The next day, Robert arrived at Novatech early, his nerves on edge. The presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the main conference room. The entire board would be present, including Gregory Myers. As he was preparing the final slides, Camille appeared at the door of his cubicle. Good morning, Robert. Eleanor asked me to give you this. It was a USB drive with the Novatech logo. She said it's a last-minute update for the presentation, Camille explained. She asked you to incorporate it into the slides. Robert plugged the device into his computer. There was only one file, a video. When he opened it, Eleanor's face appeared on the screen. Robert, change of plans, she said, looking tense. Gregory has moved up his timeline. He's calling an extraordinary meeting before the presentation to expose you. We don't have time to wait until tonight. We need to act now. She quickly explained that she had spent the night at the office, accessing the old servers. She had managed to recover some fragments of deleted files. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to prove that Deborah had warned about the flaws and that the company had deliberately ignored her. The files are on this drive. Use them as you see fit. I'll be by your side, no matter what you decide to do. Robert was paralyzed for a moment, processing his options. He could just leave, pick Sophia up from school, and disappear again. Or he could face the situation head-on, using the evidence Eleanor had recovered to finally get the justice he had sought for 3 years. Before he could decide, his phone rang. It was Mrs. Zelda, Sophia's babysitter. Robert, Sophia isn't feeling well at school. I'm going to pick her up now. High fever and a sore throat. Robert's heart tightened. Sophia had been having recurring infections since she lost her hearing, a common side effect. in children with her specific type of deafness. "I'm on my way home," he replied automatically. "Can you stay with her until I get there?" The presentation, the confrontation with Gregory, even the evidence on the USB drive, everything suddenly seemed less important than Sophia's well-being. Robert quickly packed his belongings, including Eleanor's USB drive. As he headed for the lift, a cold voice intercepted him. "Leaving early, Mr. Edwards. The presentation is in less than an hour." Gregory Myers blocked his path, a predatory smile on his lips. "My daughter is sick. I have to go." "How convenient," Gregory replied, with false sympathy. "Just when we were about to discuss your motives for being at Novatech." Robert met the executive's gaze, feeling anger bubble up inside him. "I know exactly who you are, Gregory. I know what you did, and one day, everyone else will too." Gregory's smile faltered for an instant. "Be careful with threats, Edwards. I've destroyed your career once. I can easily do worse." Robert took a step forward, getting dangerously close. "Touch my family again, and we'll see who destroys whom." Leaving Gregory visibly shaken, Robert stepped into the lift. As the doors closed, he saw Eleanor emerge from the hallway, watching the scene with a concerned expression. His phone vibrated with a message from her. "What happened?" "Sophia's sick. I have to go home. Sorry." The reply came quickly. "Go. Family comes first. We'll deal with Gregory later." In the taxi on the way home, Robert felt torn. On one hand, worry for Sophia dominated his thoughts. On the other, he knew he had left Eleanor to face Gregory alone. And the proof that could finally bring justice for Deborah, was on the USB drive in his pocket. When he got home, he found Sophia on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, with Mrs. Zelda applying a cold compress to her forehead. The thermometer read 38.5 degrees C. "Dad," Sophia signed weakly when she saw him, her little eyes shining with fever. Robert sat beside her, kissing her hot forehead. "I'm here, Princess. It's going to be okay." For the next few hours, Robert devoted himself entirely to Sophia. He called the pediatrician, who recommended fever reducers and constant monitoring. If the fever didn't break in 24 hours, they would have to go to the hospital. Sophia fell asleep after taking the medicine, her breathing still ragged from the fever. Robert sat beside her bed, watching her small, flushed face, feeling as helpless as he always did when she was ill. Mrs. Zelda made him some tea and insisted he eat something. "You're no help to the girl if you get sick too," the lady argued with the wisdom of someone who had raised many children. It was only when Sophia stabilized around 4 in the afternoon that Robert finally checked his phone. He had 12 missed calls, 8 from Eleanor, 3 from Camille, and 1 from an unknown number. Several messages were also waiting. The first was from Eleanor. "Robert, we need to talk urgently. The situation has worsened." The second, also from her. "Gregory is furious. He's called an emergency board meeting. Says he has proof you were planning to sabotage the company." The third made his blood run cold. "I've been temporarily suspended from the presidency. Allegation of conflict of interest and unethical behavior for hiring you, knowing who you were," which is a lie. The messages got progressively worse, culminating in the last one, sent just 20 minutes earlier. "They're searching my office and have blocked my system access. Robert, you have the USB drive. It's our only proof now." Robert felt the weight of the small object in his pocket. Suddenly, it wasn't just about justice for Deborah or his personal revenge. Eleanor had risked everything, her career, her reputation, the company she had inherited, to help him expose the truth. "Mrs. Zelda," he called, making a decision. "Can you stay with Sophia a little later? I have to deal with an emergency at work." "Of course, dear. Her fever has gone down. She's sleeping peacefully now." Robert changed his clothes quickly, opting for a suit he rarely wore. If he was going to face Gregory Myers and the Novatech board, he would do it with dignity. Before leaving, he kissed Sophia's forehead. "I'm going to fix what hurt us, Princess," he murmured, remembering the words she herself had used. In the taxi, he tried calling Eleanor, but it went straight to voicemail. He sent a message. "I'm on my way to Novatech. Where can I find you?" The reply came almost instantly. "Don't go to Novatech. I'm at the Regent Cafe. Meet me here." Robert asked the taxi driver to change course. 20 minutes later, he entered the cafe where it had all begun. The place was nearly empty at that hour. In a far corner, wearing dark glasses and a headscarf, was Eleanor. "Thanks for coming," she said, as Robert sat down opposite her. She looked exhausted, her red eyes indicating she had been crying. "How's Sophia?" "Better, the fever's down." Robert studied her face. "And you?" "What happened?" Eleanor sighed deeply. "After you left, Gregory gathered the board. He presented evidence that I knew about your past from the beginning, and that we were conspiring to sabotage the company. He showed fake emails, records of meetings that never happened." She shook her head in disbelief. "He even created a narrative that we're romantically involved to justify my actions." Robert frowned, furious. How could they believe that? "My father," Eleanor hesitated, "even in his weakened state, he still has influence. And he always trusted Gregory more than me. The older board members are loyal to them, not to me." "So you were suspended?" "Temporarily, while an internal investigation takes place." Her tone made it clear how fair she expected that investigation to be. "They've blocked my access to everything. Emails, servers, even my office is sealed off." Robert took the USB drive from his pocket, placing it on the table. "But they didn't count on this." Eleanor's eyes lit up. "You brought it." "Good." She lowered her voice. "I managed to recover part of Deborah's reports. They're fragmented, but they clearly show she identified the fatal flaw and that she was explicitly ignored." "By Gregory?" "Yes. There are emails from him ordering the warnings to be filed away and for the launch to proceed on schedule. And what's more, I found records of a post-accident meeting where he outlined the entire cover-up strategy." Robert felt a mix of vindication and renewed anger. Finally, he had concrete proof of what he had always known. "What do we do now? Go to the press?" "We need to be strategic," Eleanor pondered. "Gregory has contacts at all the major newspapers. He could smother the story before it gains traction." They discussed several options, but each seemed flawed. Novatech's influence was vast, and without her position as CEO to back up the accusations, Eleanor would be easily discredited as a bitter executive seeking revenge. That's when Robert's phone rang. It was Mrs. Zelda. "Robert," she said, her voice worried, "Sophia is going through your work things. She said she was looking for something of her mother's. She found an old pen drive. She's insisting it's important, but I can't understand everything she's signing." "Pen drive?" Robert frowned, confused. "Which pen drive?" "A small blue one. She said it was in a box with her mother's things." Robert felt a shiver run down his spine. He remembered the box, Deborah's personal belongings he had stored away, unable to look at them after the accident. Sophia had always been forbidden from touching it. "Can you put her on?" A moment later, Sophia appeared on the video call. She still looked pale from the fever, but her eyes shone with excitement. Her little hands began to sign rapidly. "Dad, I found something of Mom's. A pen drive she hid in my doll. It has a video of her." Robert's heart pounded. "A video? Did you watch it?" Sophia nodded vigorously. "It's Mom talking about her work, about self-driving cars. She looks worried." Eleanor, who was watching the conversation with growing interest, leaned towards Robert. "This could be crucial. We need to see that video." Robert agreed, asking Mrs. Zelda not to let Sophia touch the drive anymore and promising to be back soon. "What do you think it could be?" Eleanor asked as they hurried out of the cafe. "I don't know," Robert admitted. "Deborah was getting paranoid in the last few weeks before the accident. She said they were monitoring her emails, that documents were mysteriously disappearing. Maybe she created a safety backup." At the flat, they found a feverish but excited Sophia, holding the small blue USB drive as if it were a treasure. "Look, Dad," she signed, handing him the device. "Mom left a message for us." Robert plugged the drive into his laptop. There was only one file, a video recorded 3 days before the accident. In the video, Deborah appeared, sitting on the same sofa where they were now. She looked tired, tense, but determined. She looked directly at the camera as she spoke. "My name is Deborah Edwards, a safety engineer at Novatech. I'm recording this video as a record of what I've discovered about the Nova Drive autonomous vehicle project. She proceeded to detail the flaws she had identified in the emergency braking system, presenting technical data, test logs, and simulations that clearly demonstrated the risk. I sent complete reports to the Chief Operating Officer, Gregory Myers, and the Chairman, Augustus Mendelssohn. Both instructed that my findings be filed away and that the launch proceed as planned. Deborah's voice trembled slightly but remained firm. I'm recording this because I fear something might happen to me. My files have been deleted, my access to certain servers has been restricted. I feel like they're isolating me. She held a document up to the camera. This is a direct email from Gregory Myers, explicitly ordering the final test to proceed even without the safety corrections I recommended. He says, and I quote, "We cannot delay the launch for hypothetical scenarios. The financial cost would be catastrophic." Deborah put the document down and looked back at the camera, her eyes reflecting determination. If I'm wrong, great. But if I'm right, lives are at risk. I'm making this record so that the truth will come out, no matter what happens. The video continued for another 10 minutes, with Deborah methodically presenting every piece of evidence, every failed test, every ignored communication. At the end, she paused and her expression changed. The professional gave way to the wife and mother. "Robert, if you're watching this, something went wrong. Protect our Sophia, and don't let them hide the truth." Her eyes welled up. "Sophia, my love, know that Mommy always wanted to do the right thing. I love you more than anything." The screen went black. A heavy silence filled the flat. Robert fought back tears, seeing Deborah again, hearing her voice, witnessing her courage. Beside him, Sophia cried silently, her small hands repeatedly signing, "Mommy, Mommy." Eleanor looked shocked. "That's irrefutable," she finally murmured. "It's her direct testimony with documentary evidence dated days before the accident." Robert agreed, trying to control his emotions. "It's everything we needed. Proof that not even Gregory can manipulate or discredit. We need to release this immediately," Eleanor insisted, "before Gregory finds out and tries to stop us." While Sophia rested under Mrs. Zelda's care, Robert and Eleanor planned their next steps. They decided not just to contact the press, but to create a public event that couldn't be ignored or suppressed. "Tomorrow is the annual shareholders' meeting," Eleanor remembered. "All the major investors, the entire board, the specialized press, everyone will be there." "But how do we get in? You're suspended, and I've been practically banned from the building." Eleanor smiled, a flash of her usual determination returning. "I still have my access badge, and I know people who would support us if they knew the truth." She picked up her phone, making several calls in quick succession, to Camille, her loyal assistant, to Luke, the deaf developer from the team, to a few journalists she trusted. With each call, she briefly explained the situation, asking for discretion and support. "We have allies," she confirmed after the last call. "Camille will make sure we get in. Luke and the project team will be there to support us. 3 prominent journalists have promised to attend." Without alerting Novatech, Robert nodded, impressed by the speed and efficiency with which Eleanor mobilized resources. "There's one more thing," she said, hesitating. "I think Sophia should come with us." Robert immediately frowned, protective. "Absolutely not. She's recovering from a fever, and I'm not exposing her to that confrontation." "I understand your concern," Eleanor replied gently. "But think about it, Robert. This fight isn't just about justice for Deborah. It's about building a better world for Sophia, a world where voices like hers and her mother's are not silenced." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "And pragmatically, having Sophia present will make it impossible for Gregory to attack us directly. Even he has limits to his public cruelty." Robert struggled internally. The idea of putting Sophia in the middle of this corporate battle terrified him. But at the same time, he understood the powerful symbolism her presence would bring. As if sensing the discussion, Sophia appeared at the bedroom door, still wrapped in her blanket. "I want to go," she signed, surprising them both. "Were you eavesdropping on our conversation?" Robert asked. Sophia shrugged, not denying it. I want to help Mommy. She asked not to let them hide the truth. I heard. You're sick, Princess. I'm better. To prove her point, Sophia placed a hand on her own forehead. No fever. Mrs. Zelda checked. Robert looked at Eleanor, who was watching the interaction with a mix of admiration and tenderness. She's as determined as her mother, Eleanor commented. That observation was what finally convinced Robert. Deborah had never backed down from a challenge, never been intimidated by the powerful. Sophia carried that same spirit. Okay, he agreed reluctantly. But at the first sign you're not feeling well, we leave immediately. Sophia broke into a radiant smile, running to hug her father. They spent the next few hours finalizing their plan. They would make copies of Deborah's video and the contents of Eleanor's USB drive, ensuring the evidence was protected. They planned exactly how and when they would intervene in the shareholders' meeting. Gregory will likely open the session, since he's acting as interim chairman, Eleanor explained. He'll give a speech about the company's bright future, probably mentioning the BSL Translator project as an inclusion initiative. The irony is palpable, Robert commented dryly. When he finishes, we'll make our entrance, Eleanor continued. Camille will ensure we have access to the audio-visual system. We can broadcast Deborah's video on the main screens. Robert nodded, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. And then? Eleanor looked at him intensely. Then, the truth will finally come out. When Mrs. Zelda returned from the pharmacy with Sophia's medicine, she found them compiling documents and preparing presentations. Robert briefly explained the situation, asking her to look after Sophia the next morning while they prepared. Of course, dear, the lady agreed, observing the trio with curiosity. It looks like you're planning a revolution. Eleanor smiled. In a way we are, Mrs. Zelda. A silent revolution. It was early morning by the time they finished their preparations. Sophia finally fell asleep, exhausted but excited about her role the next day. Eleanor declined Robert's offer to stay on the sofa, insisting on returning to the hotel where she was temporarily staying, since she had been barred from her own flat by Novatech security. We need to rest, she said, picking up her bag. Tomorrow will be the most important day of our lives. At the door, she hesitated. Robert, thank you for trusting me. I know it wasn't easy. He nodded, still processing how his life had changed so drastically in the last 48 hours. I don't know if I fully trust Novatech or if I ever will, he admitted, but I trust you, Eleanor, and that's a start. She smiled, her eyes shining with restrained emotion. It's more than I deserve. See you tomorrow. After she left, Robert checked on Sophia one last time, making sure she was sleeping peacefully. Then he sat on the balcony with the box of Deborah's belongings. He spent hours revisiting memories, reading work notes, admiring photos. In one of them, Deborah was holding a baby Sophia, both smiling at the camera. On the back, a handwritten message, "For the future we'll build together." Robert fell asleep in the armchair with the photo against his chest, dreaming of the day to come, the day he would finally fulfill the promise he had made to his wife. The morning of Novatech's annual shareholders' meeting dawned sunny, a contrast to the stormy weather of the past few days. Robert woke early, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Today, he wasn't just fighting for justice for Deborah, but for Sophia's future, for Eleanor's integrity, and for all the voices that had been silenced. Over the years, Sophia was already awake when he entered her room, meticulously choosing her outfit. She opted for a turquoise blue dress, her mother's favorite. "I'm nervous, Dad," she signed, as he arranged her curls. "Me too, Princess," he admitted. "But your mother would be so proud of you today." A single tear ran down the girl's face, which she quickly wiped away. "Are we going to help the lady in the red coat?" Robert smiled at the simplicity of the question. "Yes, and she's going to help us too." As arranged, they met Eleanor at the cafe near the Novatech headquarters. She looked like a different person, determined, focused, wearing an elegant grey suit. Sophia ran to hug her as soon as she saw her. "You look beautiful," Eleanor signed, adjusting the bow in the girl's hair. "A true warrior princess." Robert watched the interaction with a new perspective. Seeing his daughter and Eleanor together no longer sparked the same apprehension as before. Something had fundamentally changed in his perception. "Everyone ready?" he asked, double-checking the backup copies they had made. "Camille confirmed everything is set," Eleanor replied. "The journalists are already in position in the room. Luke and the team will be in the front row." "And how do we get in?" Eleanor smiled, revealing 3 badges. "Benefits of having been CEO. I know all the system's security flaws." The Novatech lobby was packed when they arrived. Executives in impeccable suits, major investors, representatives of the specialized media, all congregating for the most important event on the company's corporate calendar. Using a side entrance as planned, they managed to access the building without drawing attention. Camille was waiting for them in a less crowded corridor, visibly nervous but determined. "Did you get the proof?" she asked in a low voice. Eleanor nodded, discreetly showing the USB drive. "What's the situation in there?" "Gregory is confident," Camille reported with disgust. "He announced he'll be making a special statement about the future of the company's leadership." "He plans to make my suspension permanent," Robert concluded. "Probably," Eleanor agreed, showing no sign of being shaken. "But he's in for a surprise." Camille led them to an anteroom adjacent to the main auditorium, where they could hear the beginning of the meeting without being seen. "The presentation is loaded into the system," the assistant confirmed. "When you give the signal, I'll start the video on the main screens." Robert crouched down to Sophia's level. "Remember our deal. You stay by my side the whole time. If you get scared or feel unwell, squeeze my hand, and we'll leave immediately." The girl nodded solemnly, her eyes expressing a maturity beyond her 7 years. At 10 o'clock sharp, the meeting began. Through a crack in the door, they could see Gregory Myers take the stage, receiving polite applause. Dressed in an expensive Italian suit and wearing a confident smile, he looked like the personification of corporate success. "Distinguished shareholders, members of the board, guests," he began in a voice modulated to inspire confidence. "It is with great responsibility that I address you today as the interim chairman of Novatech." He proceeded with a meticulously crafted speech about integrity, responsible innovation, and a commitment to excellence. Empty words that made Robert's stomach churn. "Unfortunately," Gregory continued, his tone shifting to artificial regret, "we have recently discovered questionable practices within our leadership. Ms. Mendelssohn, while well-intentioned, compromised the integrity of our processes by hiring individuals with clear conflicts of interest and personal agendas against our company." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Robert felt Eleanor stiffen beside him. "Following a thorough investigation, the board will vote today to determine if her suspension should become permanent. In the meantime, I would like to assure everyone that Novatech remains strong, innovating with responsibility." It was then that Gregory mentioned the BSL Translator project, presenting it as an example of the company's genuine commitment to inclusion and accessibility. "That's our cue," Eleanor murmured. She gave a signal to Camille, who immediately typed commands into her tablet. On stage, Gregory continued, "We are building a company that listens to all voices, that leaves no one behind." His words were cut short as the screens behind him suddenly changed, displaying the face of Deborah Edwards. "My name is Deborah Edwards, a safety engineer at Novatech." Gregory froze, his face turning visibly pale. The audience, confused, watched in absolute silence as Deborah's voice filled the auditorium, detailing her findings, the ignored warnings, the explicit orders to proceed despite the risks. Seizing the moment of shock, Eleanor entered the auditorium, followed by Robert and Sophia. The 3 of them walked down the central aisle, as all eyes shifted between them and the video on the screens. Gregory partially recovered, shouting at the technical crew, "Turn that off immediately! This is a hack, an act of sabotage." But no one moved. Luke and the other members of the project team had ensured the technicians would not interfere. Eleanor walked onto the stage with firm steps. Gregory, livid with rage, advanced towards her. "You are not authorized to be here," he hissed. "Security." "Security works for the company, Gregory, not for you," Eleanor replied calmly, positioning herself beside the podium. "And everyone here deserves to know the truth about the company they invest in." Deborah's video continued, relentless. When it reached the part with Gregory's explicit emails ordering them to ignore the safety warnings, a gasp of shock went through the audience. Eleanor waited for the video to finish before speaking. Robert and Sophia remained at the foot of the stage, a powerful tableau that no one in the auditorium could ignore. The widower and daughter of the engineer who had tried to prevent a tragedy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor began, her voice clear and steady. "What you have just seen is only part of the truth that has been covered up for years. The Novatech, I know, the company my father built, should be committed to ethical and responsible innovation." She paused, looking directly at Gregory, who looked like a cornered animal. "Instead, we prioritized profits over safety. We silenced voices like Deborah Edwards's. We destroyed evidence. We ruined lives." She pointed to Robert and Sophia. This man, Robert Edwards, Deborah's widower, lost not only his wife but his career, his financial security, and almost his faith in humanity because of our actions. His daughter, Sophia, lost her hearing due to the trauma of losing her mother. Sophia looked at Eleanor with admiration, understanding everything through the simultaneous BSL interpretation Luke was providing from the side of the stage. "When I discovered the truth," Eleanor continued, "I did what any decent person would do. I tried to right the wrong. For that I was suspended." Gregory finally reacted, lunging for the microphone. "This is a sham," he declared, trying to regain control. "These videos could be fabricated. Eleanor Mendelsohn is trying to deflect attention from her own incompetence as CEO." A growing buzz filled the audience. Journalists typed furiously on their devices. Shareholders exchanged worried glances. It was then that Sophia, without warning, let go of her father's hand and climbed the steps to the stage. With determined steps, she approached the podium, having to stand on her tiptoes to reach the microphone. Her hands began to move in BSL, forming clear, precise signs. Luke, at the corner of the stage, translated aloud. "My name is Sophia Edwards. My mother was Deborah. She tried to do the right thing, but nobody listened to her." The little hands continued, moving everyone who watched. "Now I can't hear anymore, but I can still see the truth. And the truth is, my mother was right." An absolute silence fell over the auditorium. Sophia continued. "The lady in the red coat understood me when no one else did. When now she is trying to fix what hurt us." The girl looked directly at Gregory. "Why don't you want to listen?" Robert, with tears in his eyes, walked onto the stage to stand beside his daughter. The impact of the scene was undeniable. A small child confronting one of London's most powerful executives, simply asking why no one wanted to listen. At that moment, the doors at the back of the auditorium opened. To everyone's surprise, especially Eleanor's, Augustus Mendelsohn entered, supported by a nurse. Though visibly frail, the patriarch of Novatech advanced slowly down the central aisle. "Dad?" Eleanor looked shocked. "What are you doing here?" Augustus stopped before the stage, looking at the three of them, his daughter Robert and Sophia. In a weak but audible voice, thanks to the microphone the nurse held, he said, "I came to hear the truth." Eleanor came down to help her father onto the stage. Gregory now looked completely panicked. "Augustus, you shouldn't be here. Your health—" "My health doesn't prevent me from acknowledging my mistakes, Gregory," Augustus interrupted, surprising everyone. "And it seems we've made many." Looking at the stunned audience, the founder of Novatech continued, "I built this company believing we were creating the future. But what future are we building if it's founded on lies, on lost lives, on silenced voices?" He turned to Robert and Sophia. "I cannot bring your wife back, Mr. Edwards. I cannot give your daughter her hearing back, but I can finally do what is right." With an authority that years of illness had not diminished, Augustus ordered, "As chairman of the board, I am ordering an independent, external investigation into the accident that took the life of Deborah Edwards and all subsequent events. Gregory Myers is suspended from all duties pending the outcome of this investigation." Gregory turned even paler. "You can't do this. The board will support me," Augustus declared firmly, "or they will face the shareholders and public opinion." Indeed, several board members present were already nodding in agreement, quickly realizing the public relations catastrophe that was unfolding. "And as for the presidency of the company," Augustus continued, "my daughter, Eleanor Mendelssohn, is immediately reinstated as CEO. Her integrity and courage in confronting our past mistakes are exactly what Novatech needs for the future." Spontaneous applause began in one corner, from Luke and the project team, and quickly spread throughout the auditorium. In the hours that followed, pandemonium took over Novatech. Journalists vied for interviews, shareholders demanded explanations, board members went into emergency meetings. Officers from the City of London Police, already present at the request of one of the journalists Eleanor had alerted, approached Gregory as he tried to leave the building discreetly. He was taken in for questioning on corporate fraud, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. Just the beginning of what would be a long legal process. In the eye of the storm, Eleanor, Robert, and Sophia found a moment of calm in an isolated conference room. "Thank you," Eleanor said to Sophia, her fingers forming the signs with tenderness. "You were the bravest one of us all today." Sophia smiled, exhausted but satisfied. "Is Mommy happy now? Did we do the right thing?" Robert hugged his daughter tightly. "Yes, Princess. She's very proud of you, of us." Eleanor watched the father and daughter, a new resolve forming in her mind. "Robert," she called, "when all this settles down, I'd like to propose something." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Novatech owes your family reparations, not just financial compensation, but something more meaningful." "What do you have in mind?" he asked, curious. "A foundation," Eleanor replied, her eyes shining with the concept. "The Deborah Edwards Foundation for Ethics in Technology and Inclusion, dedicated to protecting whistleblowers like your wife and developing truly inclusive technologies for people like Sophia." The idea resonated deeply with Robert, a way to turn tragedy into a positive legacy to ensure that Deborah's sacrifice continued to save lives. "And I'd like you to run it," Eleanor completed. "No one understands the mission better." Robert was speechless, moved by the unexpected proposal. Sophia, however, had no such hesitation. Her little hands moved quickly. "Yes, Dad, would be perfect. And I can help too." The three of them laughed, a moment of lightness amidst the storm that still raged outside. In the following months, Novatech underwent a radical transformation. Under Eleanor's renewed leadership, with Augustus's full support, the company faced its dark past with brutal honesty. It paid substantial damages to all the families affected by the faulty vehicles. It implemented new safety and ethics protocols, and, as promised, it established the Deborah Edwards Foundation. Robert accepted the position of director of the foundation, finding a new purpose. His first project was to expand the BSL translator, making it not just a commercial product but an open-source platform available for free to anyone who needed it. Sophia flourished in this new environment. The girl, once silenced by trauma, became a sort of unofficial ambassador for the foundation, demonstrating to the world the transformative power of inclusive technology. As for Eleanor, she kept her promise to turn Novatech into a model of ethical innovation. She removed her hearing aids at a press conference, proudly declaring her partial hearing impairment and announcing a new policy of actively hiring people with disabilities at all levels of the company. Year after the confrontation in the auditorium, Robert bought the Regent Cafe where everything had begun. He renovated the space, making it completely accessible for people with different disabilities. He hired Thomas, the former barista, who had mocked Eleanor, after he completed a training program in BSL and inclusion awareness. The cafe became a meeting point for London's deaf community, a space where communication flowed naturally between worlds that were once separate. Robert kept his job at the foundation but enjoyed spending a few hours a week at the cafe, observing the positive impact that small space generated. On a sunny morning, exactly 1 year and 1 day after the revelation at Novatech, Eleanor walked into the Regent Cafe. She wasn't wearing her hearing aids. She didn't need to. Here, silence was respected as another form of communication, not as a deficiency. Sophia ran to greet her with a tight hug. The girl now wore a cochlear implant, a decision the family had made after months of research and medical consultations. The surgery, funded by the foundation as part of its pilot program, had been a success. "Aunt Eleanor!" the girl exclaimed, still using BSL simultaneously with her spoken words. A habit she kept even though she could now partially hear. Robert watched the scene with a calm smile. "Breakfast?" he asked as Eleanor approached the counter. "Latte with oat milk. No sugar," she replied, smiling at the memory of their first meeting. "Some things never change." "And others change completely," Robert added, gesturing to the cafe around them, a transformed space, just like their lives. Sophia pulled Eleanor by the hand, eager to show her the new drawings displayed on the back wall, an impromptu gallery of children's art celebrating diversity and inclusion. Robert prepared the coffee with care, watching his daughter and Eleanor chat animatedly, sometimes speaking, sometimes signing, transitioning naturally between the worlds of sound and silence. 2 years ago, he could never have imagined this scene. The CEO of Novatech and the daughter of the engineer the company had silenced, now united as a chosen family. When he served the coffee, Eleanor held his hand briefly. "Thank you," she said, her eyes conveying much more than words ever could. "For the coffee," Robert joked. "For teaching me to listen to the silence," Eleanor answered seriously. "For showing me that the most important voices aren't always the loudest." Sophia returned, bringing her latest drawing, the three of them together holding hands with the word family written in English and signed in BSL. Robert hugged his daughter, feeling a peace he thought was no longer possible after losing Deborah. The path to this point had been painful, filled with forced silences and submerged truths, but now, finally, they had found a new way to communicate, one based on honesty, respect, and the courage to listen even to what was not said. In the cozy cafe, as Sophia proudly showed Eleanor how her cochlear implant worked, Robert knew with certainty that Deborah would be proud. The truth had emerged. Justice, though delayed, had prevailed, and most importantly, silence, once used as a tool of oppression, had now become a sacred space of understanding. Looking out the cafe window at the vibrant city beyond, Robert realized that silence, when freely chosen and respected, was not an absence of sound, but the presence of something deeper, the genuine ability to listen with the heart. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Robert, Sophia, and Eleanor has deeply touched your hearts. To experience more emotions like this, we have a special playlist with other captivating stories from the UK. Find it by clicking the button on the side. If this narrative about justice, forgiveness, and inclusion sparked something in you, be sure to subscribe to the channel and show your support with a like. Every day, we share stories that reveal the complexity of life and the beauty of overcoming adversity. We look forward to reading your comments and finding out which moment of this story moved you the most. Until next time.